we now know some of TRANZIT's deepest secrets. What the true purpose of this town was, why it was created, and potentially why we see within it the Nacht der Untoten building. These are some of the biggest mysteries ever in Zombies, and through a huge Treyarch leak, a developer doc archive that was posted by Nanikos over on Twitter, a lot of Zombies' deepest, darkest secrets, the internals, we now have access to. I'm not 100% sure on what's gone on here, but someone, somehow, has gotten their hands on some of Treyarch's development documents, and the ones that we're going to be talking about in this video are for Black Ops 2, specifically TRANZIT. So without further ado, if you do go on to enjoy the video, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, make sure you drop a like rating, but let's get straight into it. Now, whilst I was scrolling through these TRANZIT documents which talk about the map's creation and early development, I noted down the most important stuff, the stuff that I thought you and I found the most interesting, and one of the first things I found was that TRANZIT originally was supposed to take place 100 years into the future from Moon. Remember that the map Moon was never supposed to exist. DLC 4 for Black Ops 1 was supposed to be Paris, but they changed it in the end and we got Moon. However, originally the Earth should have been blown up in the year 2012, meaning TRANZIT should have taken place 100 years after, in the year 2112. Instead, what happened is TRANZIT takes place 10 years after Moon, so Moon was in 2025, TRANZIT is in the year 2035, but Treyarch's original plan was to have the map take place 100 years after the Earth's destruction. Treyarch also go on to say in these documents that the player characters, which would be the TRANZIT cast, Misty, Malton, Strulinger and Russman, should not know who or what blew up the Earth and why, as we were to discover that later on down the line in DLC maps. They also go on to say there were other survivors in other towns and places around the Earth, and we see that in, I believe it's the buried intro cutscene, and we hear it through radios as well. Misty, Malton, Strulinger and Russman weren't the only survivors on Earth after it was destroyed. There was other people in different towns and countries, continents, we just didn't come into contact with them. Another thing Treyarch noted down about TRANZIT's early development was that some things keep running because the town is an off-the-grid, government-created place that has automatons and future tech. Future being relative to when the Earth was blown up and when civilizations ended, which would explain robots such as Ted and buildable blueprints. This was supposed to be explained to us via townsfolk over time, which tells us that there was supposed to be other survivors in TRANZIT that we would come across, other NPCs, but in the final version of the map, none of that happened. And the other thing we just learned in there, of course, being the fact that TRANZIT was a government-created town. It wasn't just a regular town that came to be in Washington, where regular people lived. It was specifically created by the government, for the government. But that doesn't mean regular people didn't live here as well. In these early internal documents about TRANZIT, Treyarch then went on to talk about the storyline and how that would come into fruition. Some of the bullet points they wrote down was, players were used to finish Max's plane to send Egg to Earth. This sets up players being used through Black Ops 2 and DLC to rebuild Maxis' digital consciousness. The next bullet point they wrote was, Richtofen fights Maxis in past Easter egg on a smaller scale, now they fight in a bigger way. For example, Richtofen is in the ether, which is religion, and Maxis is in the digital realm, being science. Now the fight is happening in current player time rather than radio past. The next bullet point Treyarch made was, Richtofen and Maxis will battle using magic and science over the multi-purpose substance Vril. And the final thing they noted down was, Maxis will show up intermittently in various technology outlets, for example automation or special weapons, perk jingles, anywhere digital sound occurs. So that gives us a brief idea of what Treyarch were thinking for TRANZIT storyline, but that's not all, nowhere near. They also said in terms of the story past, present and future, other towns or people attack and steal. Secretly, player becomes aware that there are others out there. Now these next few things they wrote down about the story interest me more than anything else in these documents. So we've got new characters, Sam, question mark, OG characters, dead in prototype, you need to free them to start their quest in World at War, future, Earth destroyed, scenarios, side quest, save OG. If you know anything about the zombie storyline and TRANZIT, you will know that within the map, you can find the Nacht der Untoten building in the cornfields. And you should also know that within the coding, the codename for this area, the codename for Nacht der Untoten, the building itself, is actually the prototype. It's labelled that in the BO2 game files, it's labelled that in World at War. Nacht der Untoten internally is known as the prototype. And so when you read this sentence about TRANZIT storyline, OG characters, they are dead in prototype. You need to free them to start their quest in World at War. This is telling us that the OG characters, Richtofen, Taku, Nikolai and Dempsey, the Ultimus versions, should have, or at least Treyarch's original plan was to have them be found dead in the Nacht der Untoten building in Transit. There was going to be a side quest, a side Easter egg, where you save the original characters, which could also tell us the reason why we see Nacht der Untoten in Transit in the first place. This is the age-old question that we've asked ever since 2012, ever since we first discovered it. Why is the Nacht building in Transit? It makes no sense, because Transit takes place in Washington, Hanford, the USA, yet Nacht der Untoten, the original map, takes place in Europe. I believe it was Poland, or at the time Germany. Nacht der Untoten and Transit take place nowhere near each other, and so for us to see the Nacht building in this map was weird, and we never had an explanation as to why it was here. But if Treyarch's original intention was to add a side Easter egg in Transit, where you went into this Nacht building and saved the OG characters, Richtofen, Taki, Nikolai and Dempsey, that at least could give us a little bit of an idea as to why it's there. I don't think it gives us the full explanation. That still doesn't explain, okay, how did the Nacht der Untoten building get to Transit? It tells us why Treyarch wanted to put it in the map, but it still doesn't explain why it's here. There are theories you could come up with. Temporal rifts, was it teleported through space-time due to the fracturing of the Earth? Was it built by the Americans as a replica of the original in Nazi-occupied Europe? That we still don't know, but at the very least, we do know what Treyarch's intention here was. Playing as the Transit characters, we were supposed to go into this building and free the Ultimus versions of Richtofen, Taki, Nikolai and Dempsey. They were going to be dead here. Now again, what any of that had to do with the storyline is still a little bit unclear, because in the original version of Nacht, we played as random soldiers. In the Zombies Chronicles version of Nacht, we play as Ultimus, Richtofen, Taki, Nikolai and Dempsey, so they did go there, and because of the cycle, they very well could have died. It's just that if they did, the cycle would have reset, so we wouldn't have known about it. We didn't. This whole scenario is entirely plausible in the storyline, I guess. It's just so weird that Treyarch were even considering it. And clearly, this is something we don't actually do in the final version of the game. We don't save the OG characters, but the Nacht building is still there. That was never removed. It was created, put into the map, but this side Easter egg that was intended to be a part of it was never fully implemented. So we were just left with this empty Nacht der Untoten building with no explanation as to why or how it got here, and we still don't have the how. We kind of know why now, but how, we don't know. Was it teleported here due to the fracturing, or is it a replica of the original that was built for some purpose? And just carrying on with some other storyline details Treyarch wrote though, in an early kind of description of the map between themselves, they wrote, Transit, the latest map in the zombie storyline, which takes place while our former heroes were gallivanting all over space and time. The quiet town of Ideal was a government-created town for the workers of the nearby secret testing facility to live. The town was created from the utmost modern thinking that was available in the early 50s. So this tells us exactly what Transit is. It wasn't just a normal town that existed in America, it was created by the government so that the workers of a secret testing facility that was located near to it could live here. And we know that secret testing facility was Broken Arrow. The town was created from the best modern thinkers that were available in the early 1950s, and this also explains why Transit looks like it's stuck in the 1950s then. Even though when we play the map it takes place in 2035, it was created in the 50s and then just never progressed in time, and then when the rockets hit the Earth in 2025, it stood still for 10 years until we arrived there as the victors characters. So the majority, or at least some of the people we see here as zombies, were workers of this town. Of course not everyone, and I'm guessing because it was built in the 50s, we know Broken Arrow was eventually disabandoned after the zombie outbreak. Did normal people then move into this town? I'm not sure, but we have a list of all of these zombie types in the map. We have test subjects, which are these zombies in medical gowns with the wrist and ankle restraints, power plant workers that have obvious electrical burns, secret service with broken glasses, farmers that have missing fingers, elderly that have sparse teeth, truckers that have trucker hats and missing visors, waitresses, scientists and doctors that are covered in blood of course, and construction workers. These were supposed to be all these zombie types in the map, or at least the ideas that they were putting across. And then the final document I want to talk about, even though there's so much more, I just want to keep this video constrained to the storyline aspect of Transit, but a little bit further on down the line after Treyarch refined everything, they eventually decided that the map name was going to be Transit. The backstory was that in the year 2020, a catastrophic event, which was the destruction of the Earth, claimed 70% of all life. What was left, the remaining 10%, was divided, 1% human and 9% other. And as a gameplay overview, we were supposed to find planted resources, food, ammo, spare parts to build objects, and fuel, plus stay alive. Players move from area to area via a driving bus. Out of bounds areas are marked and blocked with killer fog. Players can stop the bus at various locations to search for perks. So you can begin to understand just how different Treyarch originally intended Transit to be compared to its final release version. As is the case with all zombies maps and a lot of games, or actually all games as well, but it's intriguing to finally learn some of this stuff about Transit and finally get a reason as to why we see the Nacht der Untoten building in the map. So let me know your thoughts about this in the comments section below. As always, hopefully you've enjoyed. If you have, drop a like rating. Make sure you are subscribed to stay up to date with the latest content on the channel. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Until then, goodbye.